Hi, everybody. Welcome to a very exciting Musicians at Google event. And before I'm actually going to say more, I want to show you this. Hi. I hope I'm going to make it brief. I was thinking about soundtracks. A bad soundtrack can make a movie much, much worse. A mediocre soundtrack, it's just going to be there in the background. A good soundtrack, that's going to make a movie a little bit better. A great soundtrack is going to define the movie. An amazing soundtrack is going to define the genre. If you really, really like, if you have a really, really incredible soundtrack, it's going to make you wish your life has a soundtrack on its own. Um, Now, when you think about Burr's Battlestar Galactica soundtrack, it's really in a league of its own because all of these things aside, it actually became a part of the series, just integral part of what Battlestar Galactica was about. And it shattered a couple of fourth walls in the process, and I'm sure there were many more people than me that it left speechless, essentially. And if you look at other projects by Bear McCreary, uh, he did the TV show Trauma, and he incorporated actual helicopters and ambulances in the soundtrack. For Human Target, which is another show that Bear's scoring right now, he routinely goes out and has 50, 60 people orchestra, which is unprecedented for modern TV. And the whole sort of video game Dark Void, which is just Bear just went and did the 8-bit version of the tune and it kind of uh, started a video game on its own. Maybe he talked about it a little bit more. Um, Bear composes, but he also plays piano. He plays accordion. He actually writes lyrics in all sorts of different languages, and I think I even saw him sing once or twice. Uh, but whatever he does, he approaches with so much enthusiasm and passion that uh, I think we're all very lucky to have him here talk about what he does and maybe play something if we can convince him to. And this is where my original introduction ends, but we're actually really, really lucky because we also have Raya Reiber. I don't know where she is, who's an incredibly talented vocalist. And you think you don't know her, but if we can convince her to sing with Bear, you will kind of quickly realize where do you know that gorgeous voice from. So that's the end of my thing here. Please give it up for Bear McCreary and Raya Reiber.
Thank you. That was a pretty cool introduction. I don't know how to follow that exactly. This is Rhea Yarbrough. What we're gonna before we do anything else. Yeah, you were gonna ask me some things. Grab the mic. Dude.
On?
Oh,
It did it by itself. It's the magic of Google. Okay, so I guess I'll just your mics, you're all good. So why don't you tell the good people how you started off in music? When you started, how?
Well, you were clever enough to include the Mega Man clip in there. Actually, 8-bit video games were part of the first musical experience I ever had. And the combination of video games and movies and TV that I grew up on is what inspired me to become a musician. And as I was growing up, I listened to nothing but movie music. It's all I ever wanted to do, and really I never considered for a moment that I would do anything else. So I'm really lucky that it kind of worked out because I didn't have a backup plan. And so I started writing my own music when I was about, I don't know, maybe 10, and I sucked. It was not working. But I just kept trying, and I kept trying, and I kept listening to the pieces of music that I was really responding to, and I don't know. Somewhere in high school, I started to kind of figure a few things out, and I started scoring little movies that I was making and my friends were making, and trying to see if I could connect the music that I heard in my head with the pictures that I was, pictures I was dealing with and the imagery that I was dealing with. And the answer was no, I couldn't at first. But then I did it again, and I kept working at it, and finally started to kind of find some, I don't know, I don't want to say my own kind of inner voice, but I did find some things that I was able to do and gravitate towards. And then I ended up at the USC Thornton School of Music, where I actually learned how to do music on a more formal level. I didn't have a lot of training up until that point, except for I studied classical piano for many years. But that was sort of my musical education was formalized there, but it really started by watching a bunch of movies and playing video games more than anything else.
Yeah, I think, and if I can weigh in here, just because I happen to know you sort of well, as your music has developed through all the films and TV shows and things you've done, I've heard you saying that you reflected back to music that you wrote when you were 15 or 16, and you realized, I kind of did have a voice.
Yeah, no, it's funny.
Then.
I can find pieces that I wrote in high school, and there's a piece actually when I wrote the big theme for Dark Void. I played it for a buddy of mine, and he's like, "You wrote that in high school?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Remember that one thing?" And I went back and thought about it, and actually had to go listen to it. I was like, "Oh yeah." I mean, it's not as good, but there was like all these little things that I was kind of stumbling upon in high school, and then when I got this Dark Void video game, I was able to kind of draw on all these different influences, and there's pieces I wrote that sound kind of like Battlestar and other things that I've done.
In listening to your older music and to music that you're doing like right now, it's funny. It's almost like from your high school time, it was a seed and it grew into this forest, which was Battlestar Galactica and everything. And now it's almost like you're kind of harkening back to some of your original. Could you talk about some of your original inspirations? Some of the people who influenced you from way back?
The first film score that I noticed was Back to the Future by Alan Silvestri. Anybody remember that score? Yeah.
Somebody
that
sing
one,
it. Anyone?
No, it's weird. I talk to people and they're like, they've never even heard of the movie sometimes. It's just one of those franchises. I know. That's when I was like, I feel old. You can talk to a perfectly formed human being who was born after Back to the Future 3 came out. So yeah, it's weird. That was one of the first ones that caught my ear, and simultaneously the same year, Pee-wee's Big Adventure by Danny Elfman really struck a chord with me, and that was starting after that point. My parents would notice that anytime I went and saw a movie, I would identify the composer within the first 5 or 10 seconds of the movie, and I was 6, 7, 8 years old, and then the credits would come up and they're like, God damn, he's right. So they kind of knew, they could kind of see where I was going. Then I also, as a kid, really loved the music of John Williams. Temple of Doom and Empire Strikes Back had a big impression on me for sure. And then it was in high school that I discovered, I had this sort of epiphany when I discovered the film music of Jerry Goldsmith, Elmer Bernstein, Bernard Herrmann, Nino Rota, and Ennio Morricone. I think of these 5 guys as the people that I'm influenced by the most, and the reason I say that is I realized that everybody that I adored was borrowing from them. And I would go and discover these scores from the 50s that sounded like the scores from the late 80s and 90s that I was falling in love with. Not in a bad way. I mean, just the influence was there and that they were innovating. Stuff like Herman's The Day the Earth Stood Still, or Elmer Bernstein's To Kill a Mockingbird, which if you put that in a movie trailer today, I don't think anyone would think that music was 55 years old. So that was a big sort of epiphany for me when I realized how far back this tradition goes, and started studying very closely what those guys were doing.
Can you say a little bit about Elmer?
I can. I knew Elmer. I met him when I was in high school.
It's
And
Elmer Bernstein.
yes, Elmer Bernstein, who did so many of the most important film scores to ever be written: The Ten Commandments, The Great Escape, To Kill a Mockingbird, The Magnificent Seven, Animal House, Ghostbusters. The list goes on and on. I met him when I was in high school, and I played him a bunch of my music because we had a mutual friend through this weirdest coincidence in the world. He was really impressed with, I think, the energy that I had and the amount of stuff I was writing. And he asked if I was formally trained, although I'm sure in hindsight he knew that I wasn't. He really kind of took me under his wing. And when I came down to Los Angeles to go to school, I started working for him. And the first professional job I ever had was at his house, his estate. And he was gone for the summer, and he goes, "Hey, can you house sit the place, and then I'll give you a film to orchestrate over the summer." And I was like, "Yeah, let me check my schedule," So actually, a quick side story: I had to dog sit. He had these dogs, and he had to give him these pills and stuff. I was like, "All right, sure." I did not tell him that since I was a kid, I had this phobia of dogs, because when I was a little kid, I got attacked by a dog, and I was like, "All right, I just got to get over this. How big can this dog be?" Irish Wolfhound, okay? It is this big, on all fours. It comes up to here on me. And in fact, when it was a puppy, they had to put it on downers because it would jump up on Elmer, and it's like 8 feet high. So I get over there and I see this dog, and I'm just like, okay, my fear of dogs is, of course, non-existent anymore after that summer. Anyway, so that was a huge influence on me, because I spent the whole summer reorchestrating a film score called Kings of the Sun. This was a movie starring Yul Brynner that came out in 1968. I think it's on DVD. No, it is on DVD now. At the time, it wasn't on DVD. It wasn't on TV. It wasn't screened anywhere. It had a theatrical run, and that was it. And it was still one of the most highly sought-after scores that Elmer had written. And fans were writing him and saying, "Oh, when are you going to perform that music? Is there going to be a soundtrack album?" And the recordings had been destroyed. The scores had been destroyed, because at that point in time, the studio would keep everything. And in fact, he would tell me stories of sometimes he'd go to music departments to meet a director, and he would look at, someone's writing on a scrap of paper, like, just notes. They have a stack of old scrap paper, and you flip it over, and it's a handwritten Jerry Goldsmith score from like the late 70s. And he's just like, "Oh, there it is." But anyway, so who knows where his scores were somebody's, laundry list or grocery list or something. So I reorchestrated this whole film. So I spent the summer. He had his handwritten sketches were literally all that remained. And so I was able to go through and recreate the orchestration, and I didn't have a recording or anything to go by. And that taught me more than any program, any class, any teacher could have ever taught me, because I just was able to see exactly how the germs of the ideas became this finished score. And in fact, one of the other things that I did for him was I sort of organized his whole closet full of archives, which is now in collection at the USC Music Library. But at the time, it was just a closet full of stuff, and I was going through it with him, and there were all these things that he didn't want to keep. He's like, "No, throw all that stuff out." And I said, "I can't. I don't know why, but I can't throw this out. It's like a stack of parts from the day they recorded cues on To Kill a Mockingbird." And he was going to throw them out. These are the actual parts that the musicians read from. They're in my closet now, and I don't know what to do with them. But I was like, "Do you mind if I keep these?" And one of the things that he was going to throw out that's on my wall that I look at every day is a handwritten sketch of the main title of The Great Escape. And you can see how he thought of it. And, before he wrote this, that melody didn't exist. I mean, I'll play it real quick. I mean, this kind of blows my mind, right? That he wrote this... I mean, everybody knows this tune, right? I mean, you think it's like an old American folk tune. But he wrote it. And I just thought, before this piece of paper existed, that song did not exist. And when he was going to throw that out, I was just like, no way. I gotta keep this. And so, he had a great impact on me creatively, professionally, but also personally, because I I got to spend so much time with him and see that it is possible to be successful in the movie business and the music business and not turn out to be a big asshole. So that was an eye opener for sure.
So in the steps of not becoming a big asshole shortly after that.
Oh, I am a big asshole. I failed at that.
Well, but you grew into it.
Yes,
you grew
okay,
into it over the course of 4 seasons of Battlestar
Yes.
Galactica. So let's talk about this. How did you get into Battlestar? And yeah.
Battlestar was my first job out of school. I got it. The first job that I got, I was I graduated. I had nothing going on. I was actually I crashed at Elmer's place at his Santa Monica house for a month so I could score a student film with a budget of $0. But I said it's like I got to finish this movie. So I was like literally about to go hand in applications at grocery stores and video stores.
It was a florist store.
Florist, yeah, that would have
florist.
worked. I could have done that.
He makes brilliant flower arrangements.
I could have
If
been
you
a
like
florist.
his music, you should see
Yeah.
his flower arrangements.
But I got a job working for Richard Gibbs. Now, Richard Gibbs is a film composer and former keyboardist of Oingo Boingo, which is another story for later on, I guess. So I got a job working for him, and I was his assistant. I kept the studio running. I converted all his computers to the new sampling software, which has since become a dinosaur, and I'm the only one who uses it now. But at the time, it was new. I also wrote a bunch of cues and worked with the producers and helped him meet his deadlines. And so I worked there about a year, and at the end of that year, he landed the Battlestar Galactica miniseries. So he asked me to come on board and help him finish this pilot, which it was essentially a backdoor pilot. We had to write almost 3 hours of music, maybe 2.5 hours of music in about 14 days. So it was an incredible turnaround. And on top of that, the producers had this really wacky idea of using taiko drums. And that was kind of all they said. It was like, we like taiko drums. And it was like, okay, I don't know what that means. And so actually, in that creative process, I worked very closely with Richard and also with the director, Michael Reimer. And so we got through the miniseries, and we did use a hefty amount of taiko drums. But also there was a lot of orchestral writing and a very sort of ambient, non-thematic approach. This was because the producers felt very strongly that they didn't want the kind of Star Wars or Star Trek approach to their miniseries. In fact, if you think about it, comparing the miniseries to the old show, the thing that is the most different is the music. I think more than anything else. It's the one part of the old show that was completely, well, except for the Casino Planet. That was dropped too. All right, so there were two things, the music and the Casino Planet.
Oh, Boxy. Don't forget about Boxy.
We had Boxy in the pilot.
We did?
We did. And in season 1, they dropped him on his ass.
That's right.
But yeah, he was there briefly. It was the Daggett. That was the
Yes.
other thing missing. All right, there were a few things missing.
No, there was a Daggett at one point, remember?
Oh,
Yeah, I don't know what scene it is, but if you look at one scene, you can see a Daggett flying out the airlock.
yeah. Yeah, and it's true. There is
Got a lot.
and I think the Starship Enterprise and the Millennium Falcon are in the fleet in a couple of shots.
Oh, that's right.
These are, a bunch of nerds work on the show.
All right.
So, but anyway, so long story, medium long. The pilot is relatively successful, and it goes to series. And at that point, Richard needs to go on to feature films. His slate is full with feature films, and he can't take on a weekly series that required the amount of original music that Battlestar required. So, of course, the producers didn't want to hire me at all. And while they were off looking for other people, there was one deadline coming up, which was for this episode 33, which was the first episode aired. So they go, all right, well, you can you can do this while we're off looking for somebody else. So I did it, and I did the hell out of it, and really gave it my all, and brought in all the musicians that I wanted to bring in, all of whom stayed on till the end. That episode planted the seeds thematically that would go all the way to the last episode. But I didn't know any of that at the time. I mean, I was just trying to. I don't even want to say I was trying to keep the job. I was just trying to do an excellent job because I really adored that episode. I mean, I thought it was so gripping and powerful and a worthy follow-up of the miniseries. And after the playback, the producers invited me to come look at the next episode. And I thought, okay, doing 2 episodes of Battlestar. So that feeling of waiting for, I could get fired tomorrow, though, that went away about halfway through season 4. That's when I started, when I was like, I probably am going to finish this show. I think I'm going to stick around. But that's it. I had just turned 24 when I became the composer of Battlestar Galactica, and it was really through.
How did it feel starting your career so late?
Yeah, I know. It was tough. Well, seriously, when I was 15, I was like, I'm going to be famous by the time I'm 20. I'll just land a big movie. The funny thing is, when I was a kid, I never wanted to do TV. I wanted to do movies. And ironically, the creative freedom that I have found in television, and I find that the quality in television surpasses most of what comes out in theaters. And I think about all the big summer action blockbusters that come out, and I go, wow, this would be cool if I did that, but would I have traded 4 years of Battlestar?
Well, actually, that leads me to a question. You're talking about in television, you really have time to develop the sound of a show. Can you talk a little bit about how the Battlestar music developed?
Yeah.
From your beginnings in season 1 to the stuff in season 4.
Well, like I said,
there was some really unique narrative stuff.
The show, the music went through a lot of changes, which is something that I think is unusual for television, or it's unusual for what people think of as typical television scoring. The idea, I think, of TV scoring is, I think of the pinnacle, and also the pinnacle of functional TV music is something like Seinfeld, right? Where you can hear that slap bass sound. Yeah, can you give us an example? There you go. All right, so you know exactly what show you're watching. There's no questions. It's doing exactly what it needs to do, get us from point B to point C. With Battlestar, it needed a much more cinematic and dramatic approach, but they also didn't want what they felt was a cinematic, typical sci-fi opera score. So they said no themes in the beginning. So I go, okay, no themes. And yet, in the first episode that I did, I wrote this little thing when Boomer and Hilo are down on the planet. I had this little thing. I remember it. I'm not going to win any awards for that, but it's a little germ of an idea that I used whenever Hilo and Boomer were on Caprica. And then in the second episode, we went back to Caprica to follow that storyline more. And I thought, well, why should I write a new little melody? I'll just use that one. But that's a theme now. And especially at this point when I'm fearing for my job, I thought, if I tell them I'm doing this, then I'm going to get fired. So I didn't tell them and used that again. And then there was a little, in episode 4 of season 1, I should just stay over the piano. There was a theme for Kara. And that came back in episode, it was in episode 4, and then it came back in episode 5. And then the next couple of scenes with Kara, I had a chance to use it again. And it was clearly a theme, but I was afraid to tell anybody. And then in episode 8, which is Flesh and Bone, that episode to me is a pivotal one because it begins what became a unique trait to Battlestar, which is all of our characters become repulsive in one way or another. All of our characters do something that makes us question whether they're doing the right thing or not. And in this particular episode, Kara Thrace starts torturing Leoben, and of course this also sets into motion the end of her whole storyline and her relationship with Leoben and all these things. But I'm not sure the writers knew all of that ahead. They certainly didn't tell me if they did. But in that episode, I thought, well, if this is the triumphant Kara, then Film Score 101 says to just make it minor moody, dark, conflicted Kara. But then the producers might feel it's a theme, and I would get fired. So I did it anyway, and I didn't get fired. And so by now at the end of season 1, in episode 10, which is called The Hand of God, I was spotting with one of the producers, and there's a scene there where Hilo and Boomer are hiding out, because there's this whole storyline throughout that season. And every episode I'm playing the little Boomer theme. And the producer's looking at the scene, he's like, I'm having trouble, this one's not quite working, something's not connecting. Can we use that Boomer theme that you wrote? Can we use a little Boomer theme there? And I was like, good idea, boss. Yeah, Boomer theme. And that's when I thought, okay. But that was a big, sort of moment for me when I realized, okay, they get it, that themes can be subtle. Themes can be a color. Themes can be a couple of notes. I think that to a sci-fi audience, pre-Battlestar perhaps, the word theme means Luke staring off into the twin sunsets and the French horn is playing the theme. And anything less than that is, and I love that stuff, but it would have sunk Battlestar. That kind of approach in early Battlestar would have been, I think just, I don't know, it wouldn't have been right. But I had a highly thematic approach. I was doing the same thing that Williams was doing. I was just doing it with different musical tools. Once I knew that was okay, which was episode 10 of season 1, and you can tell in the scores the point at which the producer used the word theme, and I realized I wasn't going to get fired. So starting in episode 10, things start to blossom, and I introduced.
In what ways did you expand your musical palette, like instrument-wise? But you're going to play something.
I was going to get to that. Episode 10. There was a Gaelic element that I introduced with this theme. So in the texture of Battlestar, this did not fit at all. And I knew that it didn't fit, but there was this one scene that it did fit. At the end of this episode, there was this big jubilant celebration, which itself didn't fit the tone of the show at that point. But one of the things I was realizing is that the show was expanding and developing and changing. So once that scene was in there, I thought, well, maybe I can use that as a theme earlier in the episode in a more emotional setting. So I did, and I didn't get fired. So that became a theme for Lee and his father, and then that started coming back in season 2. That set me on this path where now the score was beginning to expand instrumentally. And what used to be just taiko drums and an occasional Middle Eastern woodwind and an electric fiddle now included bagpipes.
Don't forget the wailing chick.
And the wailing chick, thank you. Yes. And then, so then in the end of season 1, we added the orchestra back in, which is the thing that the producer said adamantly that they wanted no orchestra. Well, they changed their minds. And the orchestra, again, it wasn't Luke staring off at the twin sunsets. It could be used in more tasteful ways for Battlestar, not dogging on Williams. I love that stuff. But when the season ended, the score had changed dramatically. And so then in season 2, it began to change right from the get-go. And we started adding in some Indian sitar and some tabla. And then in the middle of season 2, about another 10 episodes in, we added a rock band with this episode called Pegasus. And then the orchestral music became more pronounced. And so now there was a pop rock element. We went into season 3, and I changed up the taiko writing. I added a lot more authentic Japanese percussion. I did between season 2 and 3, I did a lot of research into how Japanese music uses taiko drums, and that on the soundtrack albums there's this track called "Storming New Caprica," which sounds different. I mean, you can just tell it sounds different than season 1 and 2. And the bagpipes are still being used in these episodes, and you get to season 3, the end of season 3, with "All Along the Watchtower," which was a weird enough inclusion. on its own. But
Do you want to
you
talk
got-
about how that came to be
Well,
at all, or
yeah,
kind of a little synopsis?
Well, the interesting thing is all of these things, I want to stress, I'm not just throwing these in because I got bored. Quite the contrary. Most of the time, as a composer, if you are working on a show that is in one language and you just come in and you're like, hey, I want to do some bagpipes this episode, you're going to get fired. It was something that the producers encouraged and in many ways forced me to do because the writing evolved, the acting evolved, the characters changed so much. Kara Thrace is a perfect example. Her opening theme, which I played you, was rather warm and triumphant, and then I created a dark version of it. Well, in season 3, we learned all about this special destiny that she might have, so I wrote a theme for that. And then later in season 3, we learned about this relationship that she has with Lee, and that got expanded on dramatically. None of these other themes would work, and I wrote a theme for that. And Baltar was another character that had multiple themes for their different personalities. And one of the things that I realized is that these people are not archetypes. You can't write one theme that encapsulates everything about them. I mean, if you think about your own personality, as much as we'd like to think, well, if I'm the hero of my movie, I'd have the hero theme. Well, there's days when you're cranky and you'd have to have a cranky theme. I mean, people are complicated, multifaceted individuals, and Battlestar is a perfect example of every character being like this. So I was forced to expand greatly as the show went on, and Watchtower came along. This was an idea that Ron Moore had in season 1. He wanted the ending of season 1 to be Baltar in his dream walking into the symphony hall, and there's somebody playing All Along the Watchtower, and the writers were like, dude, no way. So it was out. And then in season 2, he wanted to bring it back, and the writers were like, no way. In season 3, finally, I think he came up with the reason to use it, and they go, well, okay. And
What was your first response when you?
I thought he was nuts. I thought it was the end of the show. Honestly, I thought it was the end of the show because I didn't know how it was going to be used. I didn't see the episode. I also hadn't read the script. All I got a phone call was a producer going, dude, Ron wants you to do an All Along the Watchtower. And I was just like, goodbye. But the more I thought about it, I thought, well, there might be some potential here.
There might be some way out of here.
Yes.
Sorry. I thought you were going there.
Yeah, that was the second thing I thought. Well, you know, I had an idea, and I thought, well, I'll try this. I had an idea to do. We had introduced, taiko drums. We'd introduced Middle Eastern music. We'd introduced African music. Heavy metal had snuck into the score in an episode called Black Market, which was just this source piece that I had done because I wanted to do a heavy metal song. But there it was on the season 2 soundtrack, and it was in the fabric of the show. So I thought, well, I'll try to do the version of Watchtower that I think would be cool, and then I can at least tell everybody that there was a cool version at one point in the past, because I was sure that this wouldn't fly. So I did this, what I called George Harrison sits in with Rage Against the Machine, kind of Indian, Middle Eastern version of All Along the Watchtower. So I threw it together, a demo. My brother stepped off a plane, and he recorded the demo vocals, and I sent it to Ron, and I was just like, okay, well, that'll be the end of this. And Ron writes me back, and he's like, oh, it's great. And it was just, that was it. It's like, no, I can totally see that fitting with the action in the episode. And I was like, there's action in the episode? I didn't even know. And ultimately, the version that you hear on the album and in the show is almost identical. Some of the tracks are from the demo. It's exactly what my initial vision was. And I think part of that is thanks to Ron letting me do whatever I wanted. He gave me no input. I mean, it was literally the first time the producers said nothing to me. Before I wrote it, I caught him in the hallway and I said, Ron, dude, what do you want me to do? Should it sound like Bob Dylan? Should it sound like Jimi Hendrix? And he goes, make it sound like Battlestar. And he walked away like this was easy, you know? And I also think that, the network had faith in Ron. I personally believe that they weren't sure what to make of it. And I think it was something that was extremely daring. I mean, whether you liked it or not, it was extremely daring. And that blasted open the doors in season 4, where now the music is something the characters hear. The themes are melodies they're aware of, and the music became a part of the show in a way that I can't think of another film or television show that did it in this exact way. And the writers began calling me. I was on set. I was involved in the scripts.
It got kind of meta eventually, because first it was kind of like you're following the narrative of the show,
Yeah.
and then What's the name of the episode? I'm so
Well,
bad with
Someone
the
to Watch
episode
Over
names.
Me was one of the first ones.
Yeah, suddenly the show started following you.
Exactly.
Right.
The character in that named Slick, who's this piano player, every time he's talking about music, what he's saying is what I was saying when I was writing that season's mid-season cliffhanger in an episode called Revelations. So you got to think about this. I'm struggling to write this cue that was one of the toughest cues I'd ever written. And the writers called me up and they're like, can we take a minute of your time? We got this character, it's a composer. He's writing a cue and he's having trouble with it. What is that like? And I was just like, damn it. So like it was perfect. I mean, literally, David Weddle was like, hang on, don't figure it out. Don't figure it out. Let me get a pencil and we'll write this down. So that was me. It was me. That's what I was going through to write this other cue.
And in fact, it got so close that you went up to the set for that one.
Yeah, I was on set and I worked with the actors. I worked with Katie and Rourke. I taught them the piano parts. Rourke is an excellent pianist. And he was actually cast so that he could play my music. They only auditioned people that could play piano. And fun trivia, they actually auditioned me for this. Needless to say, my talents are clearly on the compositional side. But
you went to the audition.
I did. It was, yeah. So, and then even in the last episode, I will keep this. Is there anyone here who hasn't seen the last episode? Raise your hand. It's okay. Okay. All right. I won't spoil it. In the last episode, something happens. Yeah. And there are coordinates involved. And these are coordinates that I came up with. Actually, Ron called me and he's like, "Hey, we need a way to communicate this idea that the music and the coordinates are tied together." And actually, I worked with Kevin Grazer, the science advisor, and I was like, "All right, well, tell me how many coordinates, how many digits do we need?" And he, in his, you guys probably know better than I do, but he needed 12 digits to create this set of coordinates. And by coincidence, the theme that I was messing around with at the time had 12 notes. Turning to 1 is 13 for the 13th colony. Ooh, I'd make it up. Yeah, that was a coincidence. But anyway, it was a happy coincidence because then I thought, okay, and I devised a number of different ways we could generate these pitches, and I came up with complex grids of intervals and different scaling ways of numbering a scale to create these numbers. And then I said to the writers, okay, well, how long is the scene that we have to explain this? I mean, is it like how many lines of dialogue do we have to like sell this idea? Somebody being like, well, actually, let's microanalyze the blah blah blah. And he's like, oh, there's no dialogue. And well, one little spoiler: they're about to get sucked into a black hole. Everyone's about to die, and there's no dialogue. They just have to kind of do it. And you have to sell that it comes from the music. And I was like, okay. And then actually, I worked with the editor very closely to create this idea that these are numbers that come to Kara. And what I ended up doing was numbering the scale. Just the very bottom note is 1, and then just going up the scale, not counting the chromatic notes. So going up the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then she just, fortunately, they're all numbers under 10, so they're all single-digit numbers. So the 12 digits that she plays in are the 12 notes of the theme.
So sharp.
And I know. And then as the editor cut it together, we cut her punching in the numbers on the keypad to her playing the notes on the piano. And I don't know, did that come across at all, or were you guys like, what the hell just happened? Did you get it? All right. So that was pretty extraordinary. I mean, that was sort of the evolution of that score, and it was a pretty extraordinary journey.
It's pretty amazing the way the show and the music really did mesh entirely.
Yeah.
Became the same thing. Well, let's see. There are 2 directions we could go in right now. We could play some music, or we could play some video. What would you like to do?
Music, huh?
Want to make music?
All right.
All right.
Well, let's play something then.
So what makes sense of what we were talking about?
Oh, you want to do the Apocalypse?
Okay. Should I say what it is?
This is if you want.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. See if you remember this little ditty. Welcome to the Battlestar
Cool. You want to do the other one? Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right.
So that was, should I say what that was? Does anybody know what that was? You got yourself Battlestar fans. Thank you. Yes, that was the opening theme.
Yeah.
Otherwise known as the Gayatri Mantra. Otherwise known as Apocalypse.
Yeah, that theme had a lot of different forms.
The theme says a lot of names.
Yeah.
A lot of different places. Okay. Happy ending.
Sorry, I know. Two downers in a row.
Should we do a little pop quiz
Yeah, it's a good idea.
just for those two songs?
You think?
Yeah. Should we do the pop quiz we were talking about?
You want to try see if we can.
Yeah, let's do the one we were talking about.
Yeah, all right, that'd be fun.
Do we have our questions?
Yeah.
We have a special event, even more special than this overarching event.
Yeah. Why don't you ask the questions?
Okay. Should I or?
So yeah, here's a question now.
Okay.
Which we have 4 prizes and 3 of them are cool and one's not as cool.
Even cool. Oh.
Yes, even cooler.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. So should I ask these questions and should I say what the prize is?
yeah.
or
Why
should
don't we give those 3 away first,
Okay.
and then the 4th person gets stuck with the less cool one, or more cool depending on what they.
Okay. So whoever gets this right will get the first. Is that what we're doing?
No,
There's
this
Talk amongst yourselves.
this one should be the 4th, and they're in the right order. That's good.
Okay, so just ask. Okay. So whoever knows this, just kind of jump up and shout it, and then you'll win.
And no googling the answers.
Yeah. Seriously, guys, come on. Okay, so get ready. Question number 1. What was Caprica 6's first line ever?
Oh,
There you go.
There it is.
Are you alive? Are you
Close.
alive?
So what is she won? What I don't even. What,
Is this on? We do have all the Battlestar Galactica CDs, including the new one that's unavailable anywhere else, even on iTunes. The Caprica CD and the sheet music for Battlestar Sonatica.
cool.
So there you go. Okay, now question number 2 is actually linked
Yeah, you go.
to what we just did up here right now. What language is the BSG main title sung in?
I heard one over here. Close.
Good guess. Good knows the
I
guy.
thought
I
I
heard it
did-
over there. Yeah,
Where-
you got it.
No.
Forgive me for pronouncing things wrong.
The
The answer was Sanskrit.
answer is Sanskrit. Although, who said Armenian? There is a song in Armenian.
Yeah, that's why that was a yeah.
But not the
Do you
main
know which
title. Good answer. dude.
one? Me neither.
Yes.
Supplemental question: Lords of Kobol. What language is that in? Anyone know?
Close.
There is a Gaelic song, but that's not it. Greek. There's something in Greek, but I didn't
Caprica.
sing
All
it.
Caprica stuff.
Caprica's on Greek. Battlestar Operatica. Yeah, good. Actually, the answer is Sinhalese. Actually, didn't expect anyone to get that. Yeah. Okay. Number 3. Name. Sound good?
Yeah, this is yeah.
Okay.
This might we might yeah. I don't know if anyone will get.
Nice, dumb someone. Number 3. Name a player in Bear McCreary's orchestra.
Who's not
Someone
one of
who
us,
Played.
or
who's,
my brother.
Who's neither of us or Bear's brother, who played in on the show at some point. Some musician. Anyone?
Ooh.
Ooh.
Stumped him. Yeah, we would have accepted Alessandro Giuliani. No, I'm kidding.
Well, that's
Uh,
true, actually.
Okay, I got another one.
That's pretty good.
Ooh, do we take partial credit?
That
For a half answer?
That's pretty deep, actually, that you know that.
Yeah. All right. I got another one. Okay. What members of my orchestra are also members of a famous cult band from the 80s? I heard it.
Oh.
Who
said
was
it?
There it is. Oingo Boingo. No, I
Yeah.
think she said it first. There you go.
Okay, and is this for our final prize?
Yeah, all right.
This one
Our
here?
last kind of like not cool but not horrible prize.
But it might
I-
be interesting.
I want to get
prize?
somebody from the audience to come up, and I'm going to teach them how to play the Katie Sackhoff part from All Along the Watchtower. So,
First prize ever.
the question,
Do you want to say the question?
no.
You want me to say the question? Okay. What was the name of the episode where Bear had a cameo? Where Bear was on screen? Anyone? Some head scratching going on? What?
Dude, I think
Cool.
for partial credit, since we did not say it, I'm not counting the making of,
Yeah.
I think we have a winner.
You think so?
Yeah.
All right. Come on
Come on
up.
up. What's your name? Hi, nice to meet you. So, all right. Have you ever played piano at all? Take a seat.
Yeah, but I'm very basic.
Okay. So, all right. So your first note is here. Play that. There you go. Excellent. Any questions? We can do Q&A, I guess. Anybody, if there's anything I didn't cover. All right, good night. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, just step up to the mic.
I haven't quite figured out how to phrase this, but you talked a lot about melodies and notes and pitches during your stuff, but I'm kind of curious to hear more about rhythm, since you use a lot of rhythm in your music of all different cultures, and in particular how that corresponds to the pacing over the whole. Like an episode's a really long thing, right? So.
Well, the rhythm is an important tool when you're not allowed to write melodies, which is how I started. I literally had nothing but rhythm. So that was how I started the score, and I would think of themes in terms of rhythmic ideas. And I find that melodies are probably more effective for use as themes because it's easier to have a melody stuck in your head than a rhythm. But in terms of pacing across the whole episode, I always think about the bigger picture when I compose, and generally what I do is I look at an episode and I start with the biggest part of it, what I know is the most intense cue, and not only because it's the most difficult and then it feels really good when you're done with it, but that way I also know that everything that I write needs to lead up to that, and it's generally toward the end of the episode. Sometimes, like in the case of The Ties That Bind, which is an episode where this character that we know and love started going crazy, I intentionally mapped out the whole episode where every act, the music got a little bit faster and the key dropped. So that, to put this sort of in really easy terms. So like in the beginning of the episode, we're here, and then in the second act, just down and down and down. And it's, you don't notice it because it's over the course of 44 minutes, but I think that subconsciously, things like that, that and the way the rhythm is just getting faster and faster, it does create this feeling that you're just kind of spiraling out of control towards something. So that can be a really powerful tool. And obviously, when you're thinking in terms of drums, and a lot of my music is very percussion heavy, rhythm is, you got to have a cool groove, So.
Do you have a dream of something you want to do that you haven't been able to do? And if so, what is that?
Boy, I don't know. I got to score a Terminator TV show. Do an 8-bit thing. I don't know. My dream is to keep writing music and continuing to do what I love, and the fact that people are out there listening to it is wonderful and icing on the cake. But the fact that I can keep writing music is my dream, for sure.
How did you pick the Gayatri Mantra for the title, and more generally, how do you come up with these lyrics in all these different languages?
Well, it's interesting. The mantra came from Eddie Olmos. Eddie played this on the set. So it was something that even before any composer was hired was part of the Battlestar Galactica universe, in an indirect way. What was your other question was about? Lyrics. Yes, thank you. Lyrics are interesting. I didn't write any lyrics for the first couple of tunes. The first time I wrote lyrics for the show was for an Italian opera scene in this comedic moment. And I wrote these lyrics that were sort of a parody. They were like very operatic, angsty lyrics. Woe unto your Cylon heart, my girlfriend is a toaster, the spine glows red, and blah, blah, blah. And it's clear as day. It's in Italian, but it's like, if you speak Italian, there's no dialogue obscuring it. And at the dub, where the producers heard it for the first time, they were like, dude, this music's really beautiful. What are those lyrics, by the way? And I was like, oh, I don't have them on me. I'm sorry. Can I'll show them to you tomorrow, knowing that we were shipping that night. And because I didn't want them to get cold feet. And then after that, I started approaching the lyrics more seriously. In season 3, I got to write the tune that was in Armenian and comment on things that I was feeling and write a song that I wanted to write, but also that commented on the events of the episode. And it was great because I could always hide it in another language. And I always get kind of people sometimes ask, like, dude, is that outer space language that they're singing in? I'm just like, oh, no way. I go out of my way to write these lyrics and to translate them and have them sung authentically, because that's a layer that I think adds a lot of authenticity. I love the Ewok song. I'm not dogging on that, but I think that for Battlestar it wouldn't have been appropriate. So. Yeah.
have you ever been like doing the music for a project and you're like, this is the worst TV show ever? Or
No, generally I don't take those on.
Okay.
If it's truly the worst TV show ever. There are plenty of times though when you're working on something that you have to do your best on, whether you believe in it or not. I mean, that's part of your job, is you're a craftsman, and sometimes I think about it like sometimes I'm a guy who gets to paint a painting. Other times I'm a guy who comes in to fix your leaky pipe. And this thing isn't working, and you got to fix it. And the music can make things better. So sometimes you just got to wear different hats, and it depends on the quality of what you're working on. Thankfully, on Battlestar, most of the time I was the painter and not the plumber.
I appreciate your defense of the Yub Dub song, by the way.
Totally, dude. I miss it.
So, I like the fact that Battlestar Galactica got to have a theme, have a, and everyone's familiar with television theme songs, or whatever. Are people in your position? Is the industry? Do they have to defend the idea of having an opening theme now with Dick Wolf with two notes and some of these shows that are in prime time
Can
who
we
don't
show the
get
Human
one?
Target main theme? Let me show you a main theme I just did, and then I'll answer that question. So there's an example of not having to fight for a theme. I mean, clearly the guys that produced this show wanted a strong main title theme with beautiful visuals and a memorable melodic theme. And it is something that if the producers don't want it, as a composer, you can't change their minds. But I mean, I think that it is coming back. I mean, that getting to do a theme song like that with a full orchestra at my disposal and getting to write a melody like that, is pretty unusual, and I'd love for it to become more usual. And I think not coincidentally, the guy that hired me to do this show is a big fan of Battlestar, and that's one of the reasons I got the job. Is he heard what I was doing in Battlestar and wanted to bring that kind of energy to his show. So I'd love to be able to do more of that. But for a while there, it was a dying art for sure.
Can I make a special request?
What's that?
Can you do the Sarah Connor thing? It's one of my favorites.
Oh, I don't have it. I only have the Samson Delilah thing.
Oh, okay.
All right, hang on. Fiance asks.
This one.
I missed that show. Okay. Have another question?
Yeah, actually, that's a good segue. I was going to ask about Sarah Connor Chronicles, and you did that show for 2 seasons,
Yeah.
which, if I'm not mistaken, is probably is the second longest run you've had on a show.
Up there.
And I was curious.
So far.
So far, of course. And I'm curious if you feel like you had an opportunity on that to have fun and basically explore themes. Obviously, you didn't have as long as on Battlestar, but do you feel like you miss an opportunity to explore those themes and those storylines more?
Well, I mean, if I think I can answer your question, I mean, yeah, I had a very thematic score on Terminator. We were in a very similar situation with Battlestar, where we were coming from something that existed already, and needed to know, are we acknowledging or are we distancing ourselves? And with Battlestar, I could do everything except for what Stu Phillips did on the old show. Obviously, with some disclaimer, I could spend an hour talking about how wonderful Stu is and how wonderful it was to bring his theme back. But it really was a special occasion in Battlestar. Terminator was different because we wanted to connect directly to Terminator 2. And it should feel very much like a sequel. So the score needed to kind of help ease that in and be like, yeah, I know it's Lena Headey, but she's the same person that, Linda Hamilton was. You know, it's like this is the spirit of this is very much coming out of T2. So I had that as a starting point, but I was also able to say to the producers that the Terminator theme I felt from the movies, as excellent as it is, I think of Schwarzenegger. I think of those movies. I don't even think of the characters. Like the movies themselves have become such a phenomenon that it's hard to distance ourselves from them. So I thought, I don't think there's a theme that is Sarah Connor's theme, you know? So can we try writing one? And they were open to exploring this new, you know, musical universe. And I had an electric string quartet where we were running the quartet through amplifiers and digital effects, actually mostly analog effects, and recorded the group that way. We had big metallic percussion. We had car parts and brakes and anvils and hammers, and like I mean, it was a blast. And that album is worth checking out for some of those colors alone. Thematically, I feel like I was just getting started. I mean, I would adore to go back. There was some talk of doing a straight-to-DVD movie, and I think that ultimately it's just the legalities and the business of it that, you know, the rights are tangled up with a company that went Chapter 11, and so it may never happen, and that would make me sad. But I'm really happy that that album is out there, that show is out there, and I was able, going back to whoever asked me about my dream, I was able to contribute something to the Terminator universe. I'm thrilled with that, you know. Thanks.
One last question? Yeah. Oh, okay.
For those of us who aren't familiar with the terminology, can you talk about what's involved in writing a cue, and why is that more difficult than writing just some music independently?
Well, it depends on your perspective. I don't think it is more difficult, personally. I think that the difference is when you're writing a piece of music for yourself, you need to make yourself happy and express yourself and figure out what you're going to say and how you're going to say it and who your audience is and how you're going to perform it. There's a lot of variables. And most of the time when you have an idea, it's wonderful. It's like, I just have an idea and it's going to spill forth and the audience will find it. But a lot of the times, those things are not as easy. With scoring for picture, you know how long it's going to be. You know the shape. You know which characters are involved. You know the emotions you're probably going to want to play. And I found that I've become very quick at looking at a scene and in my mind almost being able to score it instantly. I don't know the themes. I don't know the exact rhythms, but it's like I can see the shape. I can see the shape that it's almost like geometric. Like it's going to start this way and be purple and kind of dark and brooding, and then a rhythm comes in here when this guy says something or when this action happens. And then a lot of the times, like I'll just look at a scene and then I see these kind of blocks, and now I go, okay, well, what are my rhythms? What are the pitches? What are the melodies I'm going to use? These things are, for me, they're relatively easy to that basic idea of what am I going to say. And when I'm writing music on my own, which I love to do, but I'm a tough critic, you know, and that self-censorship kicks in where you're like, I got a cool idea. No, it's not a cool enough idea. Screw it. You know, and the other thing that I find useful about scoring for TV and movies, you have a deadline. So your first idea, you don't have time to go back, and you're not going to write 3 drafts and pick the best one. The thing you sit down to write, that's what's going on the air. So if it's not good when you write it, you tweak it, or you get the performer to change it, or you edit it later, but it's trained me to become very fast. And in fact, I think of myself creatively almost like I think of my creative mind the way I think a marathon runner thinks about their body, where it's just like I'm always training myself, and I know the days I need to get more sleep. I know the days that I can sacrifice sleep. I know the hours that I write the best. I know the cues that I should write in those hours. I know you know what I mean? Like these are all things that if I didn't figure all these things out, if I just sat down every episode and was like, I'm going to write some cues, it would be difficult. But I have kind of learned how to do these things. And I mean, with Human Target being a full orchestra now, I'm generating between 45 minutes and 55 minutes of original music a week. And in fact, today's the first day I haven't written music since New Year's. So it's something that you just rely on the craft and the technique and the things you know. And when you're doing a song for yourself, it's fun, but all those parameters are gone. You could do anything, and I find that slows me down. You know.
So I'm not trying to evoke like things you hate, but
go for it.
do you ever watch a program or a movie or a project and you say, not only could I have done it better, but I wish I'd been able to do that? Not necessarily hating on the person who did it, but
no, it's difficult. I mean, when I have found that again, going back to that marathon runner mentality, I can't shut that off. So when I go, I'm so used to looking at picture and just constantly analyzing every facial tick, every line of dialogue, every cut, thinking, all right, what can we do? What's the best way to do this? I can't shut that off when I watch anything else. So it's very difficult for me. It's not about thinking that the score is inadequate. If anything, I just keep thinking about what else could be done and what I would do. And I actually have to make a conscious effort to shut that part of my brain off to enjoy something. And admittedly, that's becoming very, very difficult. And I've been working professionally. I mean, I've been working under deadlines like this for 7 or 8 years now, and it's almost impossible. And I think, if I be fortunate enough to end up like Elmer Bernstein and do this until I'm 80, I can't imagine that it's going to get any better. Just doing conditioned to the same thing every day. So it is tough. It's harder to enjoy. It's harder to enjoy media in general. Somebody asked me earlier at lunch, what kind of music do you listen to? I love music, but I don't necessarily listen to it for fun anymore because I'm always listening to the mixes that I've got to approve or listening to the cues that I just wrote, trying to figure out how I'm going to orchestrate them. So it's a part of my life that I've got a new side of it. A quick tangential side story to that, the way this has sort of changed my life. When I was growing up, the first pop band I was into was Oingo Boingo. Huge fan of Oingo Boingo. Huge fan. And now it's like I think, well, am I a fan of Oingo Boingo? And I am not, because I work with these guys almost every day. Me and my brother have performed with them doing Oingo Boingo music on stage in these crazy sold-out Halloween concerts. It's funny because I go, well, no, I'm not. I still love their music, but it's like a different relationship that I have, and that's my relationship with music and art has changed because of my involvement in it every day. So it isn't just something I enjoy. I mean, it's like I'm sure if any of you guys use another computer program or look at another search engine or another phone or something, and you're like, can you just enjoy it on its own? Be like, this is awesome. I mean, you're probably all thinking, the stuff you think every day. So anyway, it's a lot of fun. It's a wonderful dream come true for me to be able to do this. So. On the way, as we're walking out, I want to show the Apocalypse video. I think that's pretty awesome.
All right. So first of all, we're gonna have a table set up later for Burr to, if you have time, to maybe sign some things. Other than that, thank you all for coming, and thank you to Burr and Ryan.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.